We'll make a start. So welcome everyone, and yeah, hope you're all well on this evening. So tonight we're going to talk a bit about the imagination, which is perhaps not something you really think of. You might not think that has anything to do with meditation. And I think this is because the imagination is kind of a bit has a bad reputation. It's a bit, the imaginal or the imagination is more about I don't know, unicorns and pink fluffy clouds and maybe fairies and gnomes and things like that. And in that way, we kind of, for us Westerners, it might just be all a bit like off a bit, to airy fairy or something. And actually, when we think about that, the imagination isn't quite that. It can be that, I suppose, but it isn't all of it. And I think imagination often becomes confused with fantasy. And I suppose the other kind of scope of the spectrum in misunderstanding, I suppose, would be the kind of the fantasy where you kind of think, if I would win the lottery, I would do this and that or the other, or if I only lived in a house like that, or I suppose one of my fantasies is about greenhouses. I have this kind of I just fantasize about, the ideal greenhouse with all the lush growth and all the vegetables and all the plants, very, very healthy. And then, there's no sign of any mud or anything, and then there's a beautiful chair in there with a beautiful comfy cushion. And I can go on for that. If you want me to talk about all of that, I can. But I'll talk about meditation tonight. So this is kind of that kind of fantasy thing is more about ego, isn't it? Is there something if I would have that, or I want to have that, and it's kind of fantasizing a better version of yourself, like the next iPhone, isn't it? A bit thinner and a bit faster or something like that. And imagination is actually nothing to do with the ego, and I think that's why it's such a useful way of looking at meditation or taking that aspect into our meditation, because it's the antidote of the ego. And I'll just go back, because you might think, Satyapara just comes here and makes all of this stuff up. But I just want to take you back to the story around the historical Buddha. And the historical Buddha is that, he's supposed to be, we're not fully sure, but pretty sure that he was a young prince in northern India, and he lived like about 2,500 years ago. And he set off on this quest, and we know very little actual facts about his quest. The day that he actually left his home and family and started in search for something that would I suppose fulfill his I think he kind of noticed an underlying current of some dissatisfaction, and kind of, was wondering, like, what is it all about? And what is life all about? He'd seen a sick person, he'd seen an old person, he'd seen a deaf person, and he just wonders, like, if this is like what life sums up to, what is it actually about? And but what is handed down from this this quest is a story, is a myth, and in a way that is actually more important. So whatever is taken into this myth, we can be sure is actually very important. So all the imagery that is written down in the myth is actually more important than if we knew, like, he'd left the palace on, I don't know, the 25th of May, 2,500 years ago. And The fact that it's communicated in images tells us something about the nature of his experience, I suppose, the nature of what he discovered on the night of what is called his enlightenment. And we'll actually be celebrating this event on Sunday in the Buddhist Center. It's called Buddha Day these days. So it was on the full moon night in May, according to the myth. And I think that's interesting, because everything that you do on a full moon is said to have like a lot more impact, I suppose. So I think that's why the myth chose the full moon. And yeah, so after his enlightenment, he sat there, he had this insight, and he saw the ceasing, the arising and ceasing of events upon conditions. That was his insight. The impermanence of everything, the constant flow, the constant kind of coming into being and fading out, I suppose. And it is said that a god kind of descended from heavens to actually ask him to come and teach this insight. So, again, it's like it's a god that comes. It's not just an ordinary person that say, "Hey, would you mind teaching on a Thursday evening?" It's actually, so it's the kind of, it represents the fact that what he discovered, what he realized, was actually from huge importance, that the gods would get involved. And the whole story is just full of little things like that. And what happens, the story comes down to us here in the West, and we start to take it literal. And I think that is a real mistake, because the Buddha, the Buddha, or the Prince Siddhartha, he lived in completely different world, a world with a completely different worldview, basically. And he lived in a world that was enchanted, so a world where people believed that there were like tree spirits and gods and goddesses, and things were animated, things were alive, and things were important to them. They were like, they knew that whatever happened in nature, the natural world was important, basically. Whilst what happens with us is that we've forgotten that, and but we kind of lost touch with it, I suppose, and we don't. There's something about the way we live is that we we have quantified everything. I'll put it like that. We have quantified everything. Everything has become scientific, and science has taken over. Science is the only how can I put it? Truth. I'll put it like that. Science is the only truth. And don't get me wrong, science has a lot of going for it, and a lot of good things are attributed to science. But when it comes to meditation, science is not going to be the best companion. And yeah, so I think I just really want to I want to invite you to kind of leave science, our cognitive mindset, leave that a bit aside when we approach meditation. Maybe just for a start tonight, but who knows, maybe something opens up for you. Because when it comes to so it's a bit like when we start meditating, and we often think that we're gonna, become more productive, or become more concentrated, or be a better person, or be more patient, or be more kind, and all of that may well happen. But in a way, that is not why we meditate. We do not meditate to become, this kind of upgraded version of ourselves, because then, we might just as well fantasize ourselves there. So, when we meditate, in a way, how can I put this? So instead of thinking that whatever you are is not good enough, so you have to become more patient, or you have to become more I don't know, more concentrated or more this or more that. Meditation is actually the exact opposite. It's about finding peace with the fact that maybe you aren't the most patient person, or maybe you do have a bit of a scattered mind at the moment. And I think there's something about, I suppose it's an invitation about bringing in an attitude of relaxation and kindness into your practice. So we're not striving for anything when we meditate. We're not, we do not need to achieve anything, you know. Whatever is happening is fine. And when we kind of notice that there's a little voice creeping in, you know, about, oh, this is a good meditation, you know, you can be sure that you're not meditating anymore. You know, you kind of, this just is that kind of the cognitive mind, the mind that feels that it needs to achieve something. It needs to achieve a good meditation. So yeah, so meditation isn't about sorting ourselves out. And I think that is really important. It is not about sorting ourselves out. We're not here to become all sorted. You know, we're here actually to get into a relationship. I think I often think of meditation as coming into a relationship with yourself, with whatever is going on in that moment, with your mind, with your feelings, with your body, and with the world. You know, we're coming into relationship with the people we practice with, the people we share our houses with, the people we share our towns, our world with, basically. And I think from in a historical, in the tradition, it's often thought of consciousness, awareness is actually is not stored up here. I think in the West we often think like, you know, it's all happening in between our ears, but in the traditional, we kind of, in a traditional way, that actually awareness is stored in the whole body. When we come into relationship with our whole body, we kind of embody, I don't know what even, but anyway, we embody something in the world. You know, we come into our bodies, and I think that is a really important aspect of meditation. So it's not an exercise we do up, between our ears, trying to work something through, trying to find, I don't know, the perfect diary schedule to kind of fit everything in. Actually, we're going to relax down into our bodies and connect through our bodies with the world. And I think this is why it's very important to bring the imagination in, because this is like, we cannot, cognitively, like we cannot grasp how our bodies, every part of our body kind of can hold awareness, or, can hold consciousness. And yet it's a bit like our bodies know how to be in this world. Our bodies are born from this world, are supported by the world, all the food we eat, the liquids we drink, we're constantly breathing in and out, the oxygen, the air from the world. There's a constant interaction. We're constantly, shedding skin, it's like there's a constant interaction between us and the world. And to start taking that on, I think really has to come from a more imaginative perspective. Because basically what it means is that you kind of, you kind of start to take on that you're not this isolated unit that you thought you were. You're actually this constant kind of interacting organism with the rest of the universe, basically. And I think that is pretty big, isn't it? And it's said on the night of his enlightenment, the Buddha had this memories, visions of all his previous lives. And again, this needs to be taken with from an imaginative perspective, so not to be taken literally, but I think if we I find is a really powerful image. So the Buddha sitting there by himself in the forest, and he just kind of starts to take on that from the moment of the Big Bang. Basically everything has supported him to being where he is now under that tree on the full moon of May. And for me personally, I think this is a really good reminder to not think or fall into the trap, I suppose, that I am, that this is me kind of just trying to become a bit calmer when I meditate. So we kind of take on this, this tradition you're stepping into, this legacy, or even the responsibility that comes with it, that everything from the very first moment, from the Big Bang onwards, has just been working, supporting you to sit here tonight. And I don't want to make it like too heavy, but this is kind of quite an opening thought. It's like suddenly we're not trying to just become a better me. We're suddenly thinking, oh, everything is working for me to support myself, basically. Yeah. So just going back to this idea that consciousness is located in all the different parts of the body. One of the main parts of the body is our heart, isn't it? It's like it's quite central. You can't see it, but anyway, where the heart is, it's in the center of our chest. And, in a lot of energetic systems, the heart is always kind of central, isn't it? And it's a bit like when you meditate, you kind of, we do the Metta Bhavana, which is all, to do with the heart. And it's like we kind of recentering ourselves around the heart. And the old Greek, they recognize the heart as the organ of the imagination. And now, so many thousand years later, science is kind of catching up with this, and they're recognizing that it's actually the heart that responds to events and sends messages to the brain to release certain hormones that then we associate with certain emotions. So I think if you think about it, so I'm giving you the scientific background, not that is needed, of course, but it's a bit like the heart is important, and we relate through the heart. We relate to others, to the world, but also to ourselves, I suppose. And I just want to bring in one final image, because you always have like these two images, I suppose, when you think of, when you hear about Buddhism, there's the image of a path, as is the Buddhist path. If it's like a certain amount, a certain number of consecutive stages, and we kind of been talking over the past 6 weeks about integration and positive emotion, spiritual depth. And it's a bit like, okay, you're first doing integration, then you move into positive emotion, then you move over to spiritual depth, and now we're into spiritual rebirth. And that is one way of looking at it, and it can be very useful. But I suppose tonight I want to kind of look at it from another perspective, which is what they call a mandala. And I think mandalas are kind of quite common these days in Western thinking. But basically a mandala is a circular form, a circular shape, and it has a center. So everything is arranged around a center, around something that is at the very heart of the mandala. And we can think of our bodies, of our meditation as, as a mandala. We kind of nothing falls out of the mandala. Everything is included. So this means like, all our body, the whole of our body, but also the whole of the world basically is all part of the mandala. And we kind of just, I suppose the heart becomes the center of it. So it's centered in kindness, in this sense of connection, on the sense of relating. So anyway, I can go on and on and on, but I think this might be just a very good point to start, I suppose. To start our meditation tonight, thinking of the heart, thinking of having this mandala around us, mandala practice around us. So let's make ourselves comfortable. And we're going to meditate for 20 minutes. So just taking a few deeper breaths, perhaps. And just releasing the air, drawing in the air deep into our lungs. And just maybe as we do this, feeling the energy that we draw from the world arriving into our bodies, maybe revitalizing some bits that got a bit sleepy perhaps by this time of the day. And just, I suppose, taking our space, taking our place in this universe. And the Buddha was always depicted sitting under a tree. Maybe you can imagine that we sit under a tree as well. And trees are quite strong images, I suppose, because they have their roots deep in the earth. The branches, their leaves up in the sky, and connecting heaven and earth. Maybe our bodies can be imagined in that way too, as we take our posture. Just taking some time to relax our lower body, release the legs down. So most of our meditation is done with the legs, releasing the legs down. Feeling the support of the earth, be quite moist earth of the showers we've had. Definitely green, well, moist earth beneath us. Can take some time to really root down. You're sitting here, root into this earth. It's been there for millions of years. It's been witnessing you since you were born, supporting you, feeding you. And bringing our attention to our feet, the soles of our feet, intimate connection with the earth that we walk in it. Today you stood up on them. Your feet have learned about the earth. Just notice how it is to imagine your feet knowing about you. Just recognizing consciousness in your feet. With this stone in your body. Bring your attention to the top of your feet, the tender skin on top of your feet. Maybe noticing the difference in temperature between the bottom of your feet and the top of your feet. It's quite different. It's very fleshy, muscular, the top is more bony, thinner skin. And just moving into the ankles. Flexibility and strength in your ankles. Coming up a bit more to a fleshy calf. Skin bones into your knees. Feeling into your knees and the bending they do, the carrying complexity of the knee joint. And then up into the big muscles of the thighs, thigh bone, fitting into the pelvic floor. Just invite you to very lightly, very playfully, perhaps take a few breaths through the bottom of your feet, drawing all the way up your lower legs, knees, thighs, and into your lower back. Ready? And releasing it down through your belly, down your thighs, your knees, through the soles of your feet, back into the feet. You can let go of your legs, release your legs a little more. Stable foundation of your practice, of your posture. We can bring our attention to our hands, our hands. Notice how our hands are resting on our left cushion. And notice the cold sensation of the air on our skin, our hands against the warm body. Hands are very important. They help us to express ourselves in the world. We can write, we express love through them, we touch the world, give its textures, we create things. Just taking a moment to connect with our hands, perhaps remember what we created, what we expressed today. How did we express our hearts? What did we hold? What did we hold? We can bring our attention to our wrists, our lower arms, our elbows, our shoulders, and again just taking a few breaths, drawing up from the palms of our hands, drawing up through our arms, into our chest and into our arms, letting the breath go from the heart through the shoulders, the arms, just making this connection with the heart. And just bring our attention to our face, softening the forehead, the eyelids, cheeks, relaxing the jaw, tongue resting, scalp softening. So rooting into the sky, top of our heads, to the crown. Keeping us alert and upright in our practice, and making this physical connection with our bodies, in our posture. And then within this body, we can Tune into the subtlety of the breath. Finding the breath as it arises in our body. Our lungs. Down to our belly. Our feet. This constant interchange with the world. Find it's helpful. You can drop the gentle count. Of each out breath. Connecting with the breathing. And the subtleties of the movement, the breath in your body. The breath, drawing it in from the outer world. It's a constant arising and passing. I just invite you for the last few moments of our practice together to drop the counting, drop the effort. Just staying with what is just now. Remembering the world in which we practice, the world supporting. Remembering or imagining each other as we sit in this virtual world. And it's very real. We're meditating with each other, breathing the same air. The sun setting, the moon rising. We share this world. Rest and relax into that experience. you're ready, bring your practice to a close and open.
Thank you for that, Satyapara.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was, I found it very helpful, that distinction you made between fantasy and the imagination. Yeah, it's liberating, isn't it, to notice the difference between this kind of graspy fantasy and then something that's much more spacious and sort of nourishing about this imagination, working with images and allowing things to arise, I think, in a more spontaneous way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in a way fantasies are very, very boring and repetitive, isn't it? And
yeah.
And I think when we bring imagination in, it actually is the opposite of it. It's kind of taking us down to places we didn't know, because it's kind of taking us out of this kind of narrow ego. Like the ego can only really imagine itself, isn't it? It's like everything is kind of reinforcing its same story. And yeah. And I think that's when we think, when we start thinking about the Buddha or enlightenment, or it's like the ego just gets stuck because, the ego cannot imagine anything beyond itself or something. And yet that is what we need. So, yeah, I think that's often why, I'm sure like there's artists that have a very really big ego, but a lot of real art is actually reflecting. I'm just thinking of Picasso, not that I know a lot about art, but it's a bit like Picasso kind of imagined things or saw things in a way that no one would ever have imagined them, or like from a kind of a small perspective or a narrow perspective. It's like so he kind of was able to bring something else in, and it's a bit that quality of bringing something else in is what we need when we when we meditate.
Yeah, I mean that really speaks to me about the potential for meditation, the potential that meditation gives of sort of kind of nourishing us in a particular way, sort of it's really good. And also this thing that you were saying about the heart being responsive, I felt as if there was a little bit of an analogy really between the brain and the heart. That the brain is a bit like the ego, if you like. It thinks, and there are proliferating thoughts, but then it's so true. The heart is this kind of receptive, responsive center. And I think you gave me a sense, which I've had before, but I'd kind of forgotten, that you can just kind of rest in the heart a little. Yeah.
I think often it's something that I do. I just rest in the heart, without particularly having to do. Often like you know, like for the first few moments of the meditation, that kind of just, you know, that kind of resting. It's like, oh yeah, you know, this is not a space where I have to tick off boxes and you know, yeah, they're resting and kind of feeling supported by the heart, I think, as well, which is important. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. I think the sound quality during the meditation wasn't very good, so I think I do need to just mention that and say sorry if people couldn't hear everything. It might just have been me, but I think it was there was a little bit of a muffled quality to the sound. Bit of a shame. Sorry about that. Sometimes the technology, we don't have much control over it.
Right.
Yeah, but thanks again, Satyapara. And Liz, maybe I could come on screen now and do a little announcement. So yes, so I just wanted to mention that on Sunday we have Buddha Day. So myself and Yashadaka will be leading a morning of meditation and reflection in sort of celebration of this event that Satyapara was speaking about so evocatively this evening, the Buddha's enlightenment. So it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, which is a great moment to be to join us for some meditation, and it'll go on through till just before lunchtime, and there'll be opportunity to meditate with others, reflect on the Buddha, and devotional practice as well. So please do come along to that. You're very, very welcome. It'd be lovely to see you. It's happening on Zoom, so you can actually join us, and there'll be an opportunity to sort of be in groups and things like that as well. So do come along to that. It'd be lovely to see you. And yeah, we're always here on Thursday evenings at meditation night. And for the next few weeks at least, we will be on Zoom only. We're not planning in the very near future to be running classes at the centre. So please do come along every Thursday night. We'd love to meditate with you here at meditation night. And if you enjoy what we do, and if you want to support us, please do make a donation. Everything, anything that you can give us is really helpful as we sort of roll out this project of making meditation and the teaching of the Buddha available to as many people as possible. And yeah, if you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, that's also really helpful for us. So I think that's it for this evening. Thanks so much for coming, and hopefully see you next week. Yeah, good evening.